Welcome to another episode of Albion Informer, your source for real news in an unreal world.
Keeping you up to date on all the latest news events and the great community of Albion Online. Today is June 13th, 2017. Normally in this time slot we will take a look at last week's leaderboards and talk about any stories we might pick up from our many sources. During the PvP roundup we give the spotlight to individuals who stand out and make a name for themselves.
But this week we will be doing a pre-Hector roundup, bringing you up to date on some of the names, events, and trends leading up to Hector's release.
This show's Kill of the Week is sponsored by Substance D.
Tired of the endless fame grind? Does your next mastery constantly feel out of reach? Are you sitting in town right now watching duels, dreading your next PvE grind session? Introducing new and improved Substance D! Using vastly overpowered arcane energy, Substance D allows you to gain several masteries in a single play session with little or no risk to you. With patented wait for the tank technology in our new just let him die formula, Substance D ensures that your party goes from scub tier noobs to meta chasing monsters in no time.
Aggressive use may lead to side effects, including but not limited to constant clumping of a black hole, an overwhelming need to violently cleanse and purge. In rare cases of frazzle, T8 burns have been occurred. A simple empowering beam will put out any flaming caused by its application.
Hey Bogul, it's good to see you again.
Hello, Shozen, how are you?
I'm doing good and looking forward to hearing this kill of the week. What do you got for me?
Norzor again. Do you remember the last one when we had Norzor on the show?
Yes, that was a while back.
2.9, I think. 2.9 million.
That's...
This week he hit it off again, 2.77, I think. So Norzor dies again in 8.2, carrying a bunch of 7.2, 7.3 in a GVG against Zorn.
But is that his gear or somebody else's gear that he picked up?
He picked it up, and the killers like Boo got the kill. And if you open the kill, it's actually saying that Boo was naked during that thing. But I had a chance to talk to, I think, Luxy, and he told me that Boo is the Chris staff of the team, and he dotted him up. So that's why I chose naked.
Yeah, if they both die, it'll say, yeah, I've had that happen a lot. I have a dot on my helm. It does happen. So, hey, Norzor, we're going to be talking about you later. Going to give you a little shout out later. But really, man, 1 and 2 now, all-time deaths. I mean, that's way to get you up there. Derek says he's number 1, but you can always challenge him because you are number 1 and number 2. Let's see if you can get number 3 this week, Norzor. All right, let's get to the breakdown for this week's show. We have a lot to talk about, Bogul. What do we got for me?
We have a little bit about Veton, who was quite famous in the beginning of this beta. We do talk about the... what did you write in this notes? Great Salt Sea of April 2017? You have to explain what that means.
The Great Salt Sea of 2017. When they changed, on April 1st, they announced the changes to Dreaded.
I remember.
And everybody who was, Dreaded basically got kicked out of the area around Carleone. And there was a lot of salt that week. I mean, you could make a small sea out of it. It was definitely larger than a lake.
I know.
Okay. So we also have the guilds that stood out in the beginning, and who do we got there?
We want to cover Red Army a bit, right? We
they covered the Earth?
Dude. Like if you look at the map, if you look at the leaderboard, it's Red Army on top, and then a long time of nothing. And that's quite something. I mean, we have to talk about this, right?
Yeah, they've done pretty well for themselves.
Yeah, and then we have to talk about some of the battles that led up to Hector. And that's about today's show, I think.
All right, well, let's hit up these early impressions that we had that, I want to talk about this first because we're going to end up talking about this in a strange order because this seems to have gone in a certain way. We're going to talk about first the Veton, and that's because he's the first one who really popped out as somebody who stood out in this game. And it's because one of the things that we noticed as we were tracking all these stats is that in the beginning, the players who did their killing in the ganking tended to get a lot more fame in the beginning for the first, I would say even almost the first month. We had a lot of gank groups that were getting quite a bit of fame.
They ended up on the higher spots on the leaderboard all over. Yeah. They got the juicy oxes, they got the juicy people carrying stuff, and also I think in the very beginning there wasn't a lot of GVG action at the time.
No, there wasn't a lot, but it didn't take long. It was I would say after about 3 weeks we did see GVG
Yeah,
teams
yeah.
really moving into the top 10 pretty significantly. Veton was able to really hold his own all the way until he got kicked out of the red zones. He did a very good job of if you go back, there's a spotlight on him. This is actually, kind of funny. Like I would say it was what was it, 3 days before they kicked him out. They put him up on the,
Hmm.
the front page. They get his build out. They get him to make all these silly quotes like, and how long did it take you to come up with your build? Well, it took me and my buddy, a good long time to come up with this build so that we could really track people down and kill them. Buddy, Veton, I'm really proud of you. You know that I have nothing but nice things to say about you when we talk together. But come on, man, a long time. Kazuya came up with that build in about 5 minutes because he was like, let me put stuff on. Um, I want to
Oh,
run people down and kill them.
oh,
It's
okay.
not brain science. It's ganking, folks. And early on, ganking stood out. So Veton got his 15 minutes. He got put up on the
Hmm.
spotlight, and then on
Hmm.
April 1st, Bersalak comes out and says that we're going to be banning everybody from the royal continent who has dreaded or higher, and you have to work your way down. Now,
Do you remember what I said to you?
oh no,
Is
what
this
did you?
an April's Fool's joke?
Yeah,
Like,
it was on a
yeah.
Saturday. Like, who makes a dev post on a Saturday on April Fool's Day that is really just a total kick in the nuts? I thought it was
Mhm.
I was hoping it was an April Fool's joke. I got banned for what was it? 2.5 weeks. It took me to get down to Notorious. Longer to
Mhm.
get to access to the Yellow Zone. I'm still wondering if I have stuff in Fort Sterling. I don't know. But I had friends who got banned for longer than me, and Veton was capped, so he definitely had a way to go there. But
How long was the cap? 4 weeks?
I think it was a little bit longer than that. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
We
Uh-huh.
should get anybody who experienced that to give us the exact time on it. I
I
know
think
you
it
could
was about
make it
four
go
weeks.
up, but it was really hard to make it go down. Oof, it was
Yeah.
rough. But yeah, Veton, he ended up moving on to GVGs like many of the other great fighters of this beta. And eventually he just had enough when he lost his home plot. And I was hanging out in the harbor one day, and I saw
Oh, I remember that. You sent me that screenshot.
I do have screenshots of this, folks. I'm sitting, so this is not me BSing here. I'm sitting there and I watch Veton commit suicide 6, 7, 8 times in a row, and I'm like, really? Did I just see that? So I go and I look at my stats list there, and he did it with all his gear on. Everything he had, he put on himself, committed suicide, and there was one dude who just kept
Wow.
going over and picking up the loot off his dead body. It's hilarious. I'm like, dude, Venton, why didn't you just hand it over? Were you really trying to tank your rank that bad? So, moving on, Venton, maybe we'll see you come release. That was a
I'm
pretty
sure
pretty
we'll see
rage
him.
quit.
I'm sure we'll see him again.
I hope we
Yeah.
do. I enjoy his style of play, and we need him around there to keep the red zones dangerous. So let's start talking about how GVGs did take over at one point here, and we've had quite a bit of contact with Red Army over the last week, trying to get their side of the story on this because we did say Red Army has stood out. Bogle, tell us a little bit how
Yeah.
much they have stood out because you read these stats. Give us some of these stats.
They are basically number one in everything. um, except for a few weeks, like in, I don't know, in week 3 of May or something. But when you look at the leaderboards, you see the like top kill fan player, which is not so interesting because we're talking about a guild. But then you look at the top kill fame for a guild, and GVG attacks won and lost. And like Red Army has been up there with like 20 each every week, like GVGs. And I don't know. To me, that stands out first and foremost. But we were talking about the beginning, right? And at that point, we have to mention a different Russian group,
Oh,
Nerfguard,
oh yes, Nilfgaard. Ah,
because they have been. first the largest competitor, I think, in the beginning of Red Army, before they kind of quit, like in, was it beginning of May? And then Red Army took over.
Can I
And
ask you a
yeah,
quick
yeah,
line question here? Because we're going to bring this
sure.
up later as the craziest shit we saw of the beta so far.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I want to bring this up real quick. Did they leave before or after they dropped their home plot to food shortages?
Before,
Okay, so
but
that
they
was
kind of
a
came
that
back for that, yeah.
okay, so there was more of a hey, we've kind of relaxed and we're not paying attention, and then the
Yeah.
guys who were left to just putter around were the idiots who dropped the home plot.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be clear on that. All right.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Hmm.
Nilfgaard still had its shit together when they were playing.
Yeah, and
Okay,
they
good to
had it like they were all over the top tens at that point. Nilfgaard at the beginning of beta, together with what is it, the Red Army and maybe Tea Party as well,
Yeah,
at
I
some
do
point.
remember Tea
Yeah.
Party popping in there quite a bit, and it looked like Tea Party was really going to push at one point to make a real move into Red Army, like stats wise. It was pretty impressive just because of the amount of fame they got in 2 consecutive weeks was shocking. Just like what we had seen before that was almost half of that. Like the top week we had seen was from Derek up until that point, and then somebody dwarfed that, and they got 3 guys had dwarfed that from
Mm.
it was just
Right, right.
it was pretty impressive that week. But overall, we do keep seeing those 3 names from Red Army keep popping up in the top 10 consistently over and over. Whether it's one guy in the top or 3 guys 1, 2, and 3, we see Derek, King Mojo, and Norzor up there every week. And I did get a chance to chat with King Mojo a bit this week about how they go about doing it, and it was a really good conversation. I did enjoy it. It turns
It's
out,
rare that you get this kind of insight, right? It's cool, that they allow us to like talk about this on air, and also that they were nice enough to just, spend some time and answer some questions and allow us to show this to everybody.
yeah, that was, he actually asked me if I was going to publish the questions right out, and I told him, maybe I will if we can get more of these together from Red Army, because I think these are pretty good, and I wouldn't mind doing a full article on just, the history of Red Army and like whatever. But moving on, we're going to get to some of the things they talked about, because people are like, where did you guys, come from? This group that you have going on now of, Derek and who I guess that was Bosch for people who played a long time ago in Money Guild. If you remember Bosch, that is Derek now. Him and Hoba used to play together in Money Guild all the way back in Beta 1. And then when Money Guild formed together with Red Army, they started playing together with Mojo. And Norzor joined their group when Unsullied. Unsullied is an older group. I believe still some of them are around today, aren't they, Bogle? I've seen them around a little bit.
Oh,
Don't they have a...
good question. I remember the name. I remember the name, but maybe they are. If you are, let me know.
Yeah. But they got their newest guy is Gurr, who's their healer, and I asked them if they had like a gimpy carry guy, because on my team, my GVG team, I'm the guy who constantly gets told to stop getting everybody killed, and it doesn't really matter which role I'm playing. I'm pretty good at that. If you need to
What,
carry
getting
somebody on
killed?
your no being carried, I can get carried pretty
Oh,
good.
yeah.
So if you need
Hmm.
somebody to not be the best player on your team, I can do that. And I was like, who's the guy on your team? And he was like, well, we don't really have one, but we have a new guy who kind of stepped into a really harsh world for his GVG, how do I say, like, this is when he gets to join them. This is his debut as a Red Army GVGer, is in 8.1 going against 8.2. And
Wait, did the guy play before, right? He's not just
I'm
like, "Hi,
guessing that
give me
they didn't get
8.2."
real clear on that, but
Oh,
they said he's pretty good at
wait.
healing and they're pretty happy with him. But Derek is always trying to.
So that's how a Red Army rolls. They just take random people and give them 8.2 and
No,
no,
they
right?
didn't have 8.2. They went against 8.2. Let me be
Oh,
clear
yeah,
here.
yeah.
So
Just
his
keep that.
first match was
Uh-huh.
fighting against 8.2, and so he's like learning how to play with these guys on the fly. And I'm guessing that he's played before. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it's not like you're gonna throw some guy against Nilfgaard for his first GVG Sky T. It wouldn't. Nobody would do that to somebody making a guy play against Nilfgaard's A team 3, 4 times in a row in a single week. Um, but these. He came in. He did a good job. For those who you don't know, that was my GVG experience. My first 4 GVGs were against Nilfgaard's A team. It was a good time. Um, Happy birthday to me.
Sounds like you got hit pretty bad, burnt pretty bad.
Oh gosh, I still have burns on my fingers from that match. I kept getting pulled out by Jagger. He would grab me out of my group, throw me to the rest of everybody. It was like getting literally thrown to the wolves. I'm sure they were giggling on their end. They're like, "Grab the noob, grab the noob." But yeah, so apparently that did not happen to Gurr. He showed himself to do uh, a great job. And they have been able to, for this entire beta, kick some ass, and it's really impressive.
Hmm.
Uh, I did ask them if they, if there's anybody they really wanted to face, and he was like, basically they've gotten to face everybody they wanted to. They got to face Nilfgaard, Envy, Zorn, Chicken Kiss, EOS, KDS. So they've gotten to face almost everybody they wanted. But Ridden, if you're out there and you have a team, they want to face you. They want to raffle stomp you.
Who's written?
Ridden is a streamer who apparently was playing this game for a bit, and the reason they want to play him is because of his reactions and that he's really just a wild
So they
overboard
just
kind
want
of
to
guy.
go on stream and show off.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's
Ah,
nothing wrong with that. I mean, is there really something wrong with that? I mean, come
I
on.
guess not. I
He,
guess not.
that's what
No.
the guy, Ridden's known for is, being, kind of bombastic. And I think these guys would enjoy it. And, you know, if you have Derek talking shit, on your team and backing it up, why not get, a little bit of stream for that, right?
Mm-hmm. All right. All right. I
So,
see that point.
but it's I asked them, what's going on now as well, and if they're kind of facing anybody right now, and they did want to bring up that they've been facing Zorn lately, and that Zorn is constantly putting up a good fight. And I wanted to mention them because I think of Zorn as one of those almost a mid-tier guild, and not in skill. I'm talking about in size. Like they don't have the numbers to really have one of these kind of long fights against Red Army, but they are constantly putting up the fight, and it's just really impressive from Zorn, and especially when your enemy comes out and mentions you as, "Hey, you guys are just a constant fight, and it's good." So I did reach out to Lugsy, and I asked him for his thoughts on it, and he said,
Mm-hmm.
it's. Hold on, let me. I actually have a quote from him here because I wanted to get that for you. Uh, RA is a guild that makes the game very interesting. No hard drama, just competitive so far. And, that's the kind of
That's
respect.
nice.
Yeah, it's the respect that
That's
I want to
nice.
see between these kinds of guilds. And that was awesome to see. So, and I did get to talk to both these guys for a while, and everybody was really cordial, you know. And this is top
Yeah,
guilds who
you
are
don't
fighting
think
each
that
other.
sometimes, no? If you read the PvP
Oh
forums or the
no, no,
PvP
no.
banter forums, you think those guys must hate their guts, right?
Oh yeah, they are brutal to each other, But again, if you can keep it in game, I don't care. Well, here's another question I asked these guys. I asked Mojo if any of those guys, since they've been able to relax a little bit in the last month, are starting to get like 8 hours of sleep, and he was like, "I think that our team has gotten 2 8-hour nights of sleep, all
Like
beta because
two?
two two
Wow.
nights." They
So
had
you're saying they are doing all the GVGs, like the 20 GVGs a week? Like, oh, actually, it's
Well,
more.
yeah,
But like
they are showing
40?
up every day. Is what I'm saying is their A team fights every day.
That, that's a tough pace, no?
And on top of that, and here, let me see if I can get this. I want to quote this guy because this is a
Mhm.
mentality in how they play, and this is probably why so many people have a hard time not just facing Red Army on the GVG field, but seeing them in the world. Let me get this quote right. If we are at war with a guild, we camp their lands 24/7. We gank them, we zerg their GVGs. Yes, it can be dirty sometimes, but whatever you can do to make the other guilds left comfortable when you are sieging them, the better it is. To accomplish this, of course you need to be no-lifers. And I think a lot of our guys are known for being exactly that. About release, yes, we are working now to make our guild stronger for July 17th, and we will start taking it easier, like you said, but we are still playing every day and GVGing on a daily basis, and of course we will go full no life this summer. So that is what it takes to be a top team, playing every day, going against great teams every day, and not just looking at the GVG as the only event when you were at war, but putting it 100% into a war, getting all your guys in there to disrupt the supply lines, disrupt their gatherers. If the other team has other
They have
GVGs
some
against
help
other,
though, right?
well, yeah, they're in a giant, alliance. They're in
They have
oops.
how many members has Red Army? 300 something, and they
Oh,
have
you're
like
talking
one
about
or two
this
alt
GVG
guilds.
group? Well, the GVG group is just a part of a larger whole. And that was one of the things that kept being reiterated to me is that it's not just about their
Mm,
team, it's about the stuff that's around them. They are
mm. No,
a
I'm just saying because
semi-communist guild, and they sometimes have a pretty high tax, but it's all about getting everybody to come on
I
for at
think that's
least.
something that's not just too easy to say, right? Because I'm sure not all of the guilds work like this, where you just sponsor your team in a way.
Well, I don't
So
think if they're just sponsoring a team. I think they have many, many teams. In order
of course,
to
yeah.
field this many teams though on a regular basis, people have to be working for a common goal, and
Yes,
they are.
basically, I just wanted to point out the little man who's working and gathering, and he's getting like his defenses done for him for the territory he needs. And, there's that synergy there that I wanted to point out, if you know what
Well, I will say this, with all their territories covering the entire world, it does
I mean.
make it a little hard for them to cover everything with no matter how many guys they have. I have been
I
going into your
always wonder how they
territory
do that.
and
Like,
stealing your
how
shinies.
how do you keep all those territories up? How many guys do they have that feed all those territories?
Farm
How much
wise?
work, how much work is it to run to every zone, put that stupid carrot soup, that soup into the building, and then like do that what 80 times, 100 times? So they must have some kind of organization, and then next time we have somebody on from Red Army, you can tell me their secret how they do it. Really curious to see how they do
Well, they do seem pretty willing to discuss things with us. They're not, a secretive team. They're not trying to hold themselves apart from the world, except for maybe Derek. I mean, he did say that he was the king of Mercia and conqueror of Anglia. Was that it? That I
it. What?
no no it's the hold on, let me get you guys the exact quote on this because
That
I
just
asked
sounds
I
like
was
it.
asking Derek,
Yeah.
can you answer some questions for me? I got Mojo on the line, and is there any way you can respond to me? This would be cool. And
And Derek just gives you a bunch of bullshit
yeah.
telling how great he is.
Okay, here's the quote. The ruler of Cumbria and conqueror of Mercia does not stoop to such a low level. So
What the fuck?
I thought it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Mad props to you, Derek. That's pretty good. I'll see you in global
Oh, those
sometime soon.
GPTers. There's A teams with their attitude. I tell you what.
Yeah. But I don't know. Is there anything else we should go into and give props to these guys? I think we kind of, polished their knob enough for one afternoon and can say, hey, if you guys don't think that Red Army is the best right now, and I know there's a lot of you who don't, Bogle, do you read the forums?
Some parts. I Yesterday I tried to read the Russian part with like Google Translate, but I had some issues. But let's talk about the Russian forums part some other day because there's
But
some great quotes there.
but we did get the
But
idea that some people don't think Red Army is number one, right?
I guess,
Well, I got that impression from at least
yeah.
EOS doesn't think they're number one. I don't know where EOS is in the top 10 right now, but um, if you guys want to challenge Red Army, there's an easy way for you guys to do this. You go to, was it Swamplight Marsh over on the eastern side of the high black zones. Go in there, take the war camp. It's not hard to do, and then just start attacking their stuff. I mean, the lads are doing it right now. That's what is it, Lupak? He's going to
Hmm.
attack them today. So maybe we'll get a video of that later today. And that looks like that's going to be fun. But if you guys want to follow suit, there's a way to do that. Hey, I don't know. Maybe they'll be fighting the lads to get in there, though. It's...
I think 2 or 3 teams or guilds we have to mention. Um, they may not be as high in the GVG scene, but they pop up on the top kill fame player leaderboards a lot, are No Life and The Abyss. And those guys recently, at least in the last few weeks, leading up to Hector, have been in the top 10 over and over again. I just wanted to put the name out there. If you guys listen to this, we'd love to talk to you guys of what you do, how you do it, and maybe give us some info on like a background
Well,
thing
doesn't
we
that go
can
into
talk about.
one of the... Sorry to interrupt you there, but doesn't that go into one of the trends that we had seen in the last few weeks? As we've
It
seen in the
does.
beginning, we saw, like we said, we saw the solo ganking being really prevalent in the top
Hmm.
10. Not solo
Hmm.
ganking. I don't want to call it so ganking of open world ganking, because that's really what it was. It wasn't solo as
Right,
much
to
as
get player
small
kill
groups,
fame.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we saw the advent of GVGs really starting to pop in a lot of high tier equipment. But now we're
Hmm.
seeing that Hellgates are starting to get the same level of equipment as we were seeing in GVGs, and groups can get in many more Hellgates now, and it's just
Right, right.
leading to a different breed of player invading the top 10. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that all these guys don't do some GVGs as well, but we're just seeing a lot more people who aren't just stacked with GVG stats.
Right, right. I think that's an important observation to make is like in for the last or for the first few months we have that group hovering around like 4 or 5 million fame on the top 10 in the kill boards. And right now we see a drastic jump to like 7 and almost 9 million this week in terms of top kill fame for players. And that's comprised of both GVG, but mostly I think Hellgate and open world kills. So I think it's either that people are bringing out their shinies, their tier 7 and tier 8 stuff finally, maybe because they are looking forward to wipe and are confident enough to bring out their good stuff, or it's just what people do now. They do Hellgates instead of GVGs. What do you think?
I think that there's just a combination of the amount of effort that it takes to do a GVG
Hmm.
takes a certain amount of time, and you're going to be locked into that. Whereas if you do Hellgates, you can do 3, 4, you can just get more Hellgates in, and the risk is, lower in a lot of ways with like an easier reward. I've been saying for a while that I didn't really know what the advantage was to having a lot of territories. And while the advantage seems to have gone up now with the changes in resources and the way that
Hmm.
they spawn, with specifically with tier 8 resources in the territories like that, um, I just don't see them as important as just for people who are in a beta right now feeling like screwing around, getting some PvP and killing as close to their level of
Yeah,
person as
that's
possible.
interesting. That's interesting to see whether or not in the future the people who are high up on the rankings are getting the fame in because they can do like more Hellgates compared to GVGs, or is it if it's just the good teams who do both, or if it's the high-end, high-tier GVGs that force you to use 2 or 3 sets and as a consequence may result in 2 or 3 deaths that are really high value. Interesting.
Well, I think we'll probably see like the mix, and I mean we will see those occasional GVGs that pop in there because they were for something really important, and somebody wears that really crazy gear that has that giant spike in value when they drop it. And I'm sure we will see that, eventually. But it's right now. I maybe towards the end of this beta, people just start putting on their crazy stuff and just going to Hellgates. Who knows, and losing it. But I think the most high end gear will be reserved for Hellgates. Not what did I just say?
GVGs.
For GVGs. Yeah, I'm gonna bring this 8.3 into my Hellgate. Oh, my healer disconnected. Crap. So, speaking of healers disconnected, we just saw a great video. One of my friends, and I wanted to just name drop him here, NyQuil, had this great video where it's a 4v5 with no healer in a Hellgate, and they win. Funny stuff. NyQuil, great job. Thanks for linking me that video. I'm gonna, crazy stuff we saw this beta. But let's move on from the GVG scenarios and these top guys. Unless there's anybody, is there any other guild you really want to mention?
There are so many guilds. I'm sure we'll get
We're
to
missing
many more of
somebody
them.
out there. I mean, we didn't even give a good rundown of the top 10. And one of the reasons we didn't do this is because we will give you the top 10 next week. And it'll give you the top 10 full of all time next week and the top 10 for the previous week next week. But this was more about like people kept going up and down over these last months, and we really wanted to shed a spotlight on some of the groups that had just stuck out over and over again. Now, we're going to move on to some of the great events that we saw. There were two events that we're really going to, talk about as community events, and then I think we'll wrap it up here. Bogul, what do you want to start with here?
You actually mentioned this earlier before already. It's the Nilfgaard battle. It's when Nilfgaard dropped their home plot, and everybody rushed to fight about it when the timer was about to come. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I watched Spoon's video of that. I actually watched a couple of his videos, and that was just ridiculous. I mean, there are a lot of ways to get people to come over and fight for something. And I guess if you want to drop your home plot with a bunch of Tier A buildings on it and then make some random alliance to fight over it, yeah, that's a good way to do it. You're going to get a lot of people killed.
20 million worth of fame, actually.
4 hours, 20 million fame, so much respect. How do you get it all back? I mean, I gotta say, this now, guys at Nilfgaard, I'm giving you a little bit of a burn here on this, but it's not the worst home drop I have seen this beta, and this other one's gonna take the cake. This was one of the craziest things I've seen because everybody always talks about, gotta be careful of that spy. Worry about that spy. Hey, anybody seen a spy? Who's the spy? But apparently EOS was able to sneak a spy into Rip's guild and up into its leadership structure. Somebody got into a War Master position. Now I've seen some guys get War Master pretty
I remember
quick.
that. I remember that. Yeah, when War Master still had the ability to drop territories, right?
Yeah, and
That got changed, yeah. But,
well, this is why, because EOS snuck somebody into Rip's home and dropped their territory. Game over. Easiest way to win a battle is to not have to fight it, and that was pretty sneaky. It was pretty underhanded. It was also pretty effective. So effective, in fact, that it was changed 3 days later in a patch.
I think I saw somebody trying to do a willing to buy message of like, hey, buying a territory. I think that was from Rip.
Oh God, rough. I'm sorry, guys, and Rip. I hope to see you back in release. I like some of your members very much. You guys are some good people. EOS. I don't know how to say. I don't want to say well done. But
done. Yeah. It had to be done at some point.
Yeah. Somebody did it, and you guys got to do it, and thank God you guys did it beforehand. This is what I said. When Bogul told me about this at the time, because he brought it up to me. It was hey, thank God these guys did it before it went live and it got to get fixed. You guys really found a good bug there. So mad props on finding, an exploit and getting it out of the game. So good job. What else did we see as the big battles? Because that was not the biggest one, was it? I know there was another one because it has my favorite, craziest event of the entire beta so far occurs during this event.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but So we just talked about that 20 something million fame battle from Nilfgaard.
Right.
And there's one that's 30 million, 30-ish million actually. If like
30 plus million.
yes, I mean similar to this event from Nilfgaard, you have to add a few battles together to actually get the total number of fame. Um, the one I'm talking about is a French community event. It was, I think, what, 4 weeks back now? 5 weeks back maybe. And basically what happened was that a lot of French community members, a lot of French, famous French community, maybe organizers or people who are famous in the community, they decided, hey, we're going to have an event, a kind of a PvP slash PvE event where they gathered in a zone and made a bunch of teams with the goal of trying to like down the raid boss in the center. And whoever would be able to kill the boss was supposed to get a guild cape. But the whole thing turned into a large battle.
Yeah, these things
And
never go quite as planned, do they?
no, I think there's another anecdote here where the there was a winner announced later who like got the most points. They did it with a point system. But the guild who got the cape, they apparently they kind of suicided into the boss just to get the cape, and they didn't really care about the rest.
Uh,
That's what I heard.
SBI says, hey, we're going to support the community with a reward for this really cool event. Thank you guys for putting on the event. We'll just put this cape, token here. Oh, somebody heard about it. Snap. But it did lead to one of the coolest events we've had. I mean, 30 million, fame dropped
Hmm.
over almost 6 hours on this one. This was a long one, wasn't it? It was almost half of the... Wow, it was...
Yeah, yeah. Well, they met at some pre-appointed time, and then they had the teams try to do the bosses for like the mini bosses for the points, and then they were meeting and fighting, and then it went on and on, so on. But what was I going to say? Points, kills, deaths, capes. Shozen, help me.
Well, capes are... I have no idea where you're going, Bogle, but this happens quite a lot. So this isn't the craziest thing that I've seen, Bogle losing track of where he is. This happens quite a bit. The craziest thing I've seen, because you guys are thinking, okay, you've hyped this up a bit. You've hyped it up. We've seen people drop territories. We've seen people forget to feed territories. How could anything be crazier than this? Well, we were watching this thing, and we're watching it through the stats. So what we get to see is people getting kills and what they're doing. And there's a guy, a French guy who was involved in this event all day. Lepeno, I believe, is his name. Um,
La
he
Penu.
Lepenu, yes, Lepenu, and he had the second most fame in this entire battle because he had been getting 50% of the damage on guys all day long, getting last hits all day long, just involved in this battle all day long. So he's the kind of guy who you'd expect to be first, not
Hmm.
to be 300,000 fame behind the guy who came in first, who happened to kill him.
I have to laugh because I know where the story.
So Lepeno dies apparently after a full day of killing and looting and gaining a full 695,000 fame. But then he dies for 680,000 fame to a guy who only got 2 kills in the entire day, giving him 900,000 fame while wearing flat T4 and 5. Way to go, Sisatil. You have definitely tanked Lepeno's rank. Well done, sir.
Wait, so
Flat
you're saying the guy just had a bunch of stuff on him,
Yeah,
went around in circle, like overloaded, and just got
overloaded.
picked
So
up?
he had 7.2
Ah,
artifact staff on him, tier 8
yeah.
helms on him, lots of 6.2, lots of 7.2 non-artifact gear, 4 armored mounts, and he's sitting on a T5 mount plane. And this guy comes over to him with a double-bladed staff, a
And
poison
just
helm,
says thank you.
T4, T5 flat, and kills him for 680,000. Now, I've seen a lot of people die for more than that, and a lot of people get a lot of better kills than that. But he did that solo in T4 and T5 flat and got 900,000 fame in 2 kills in T4, 5, and flat. Now, I might be pronouncing this guy's name wrong. Cecitil? It's Cecitill. And, guy, Lepenu, there is a lesson to be learned here about greed. And on that note, I think we can wrap up this show because we've gone pretty long. And it's been a great show. We have to get ready for another show in 2 days where we are going to be talking more about the things that we have noticed from the Hector update, having played it now for a few days, almost a week, and really diving into more of the little bits. And the first thing I'm going to say, because those of you who are listening to last week's show know I got pretty rough on the map. It has some improvements, and we will talk about those in the next show. So until next show, Bogul, good night.
Good night, Shozen, and good night, everybody else.